Hi everyone, this is John Stewart with Autodesk, and thank you for taking the time to join the webinar today. It will be recorded and we'll be posting it onto Autodesk's website for you to view later or to share with colleagues at your convenience. So really, this is going to be the first webinar in a 4-webinar series over today and Thursday. So I have looked at the registrations and I've noticed quite a few of you are going to be attending both. So this initial webinar is really an introduction to Vault and to those who may not have seen it or know anything about it. So the agenda is really, I'm going to do a quick poll and see, what the audience is using, what their experience is around data management. Then we'll quickly talk about the challenges that you're probably facing, and hopefully it resonates well with you. And then we'll talk about PDM and then where the sources of waste time are, and hopefully then the 3 Vault features that I'm going to focus on really show you where you can gain productivity. And I'll show demos of these features so that you can see the benefit that Vault will add to your workflow. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So really, from a point of view, I've muted all the lines. And if you can use the question box that's within GoToMeeting, that will definitely help me with, answer your questions at the end. So really, I want to do a quick poll to find out what you're using out there. So I'm going to flash one up on your screen now. It's really to understand how long you've been using Autodesk products. Are you new to our products, or are you basically 2 to 5 years, 5 to 10, or 10 plus? And the stats are coming on. It looks like 50% of the audience is greater than 10 years using Autodesk products. We'll open it up for another couple of seconds and then I'll post it. Okay. So hopefully that's gone up on your screen. So 45% are 10 plus years, 20, 25. So, you're definitely using our products, which is great. So we've got some seasoned users out there. So the next poll is going to be, what are those products that you're predominantly using within your design world? Are you using non-Autodesk products? Are you heavily Inventor? Are you using AutoCAD Electrical? Are you Revit users? Okay, we'll give that a few more minutes. Okay, so it really looks like the audience is heavily using Inventor, and then from a 2D point of view, they're heavily using AutoCAD or AutoCAD Mechanical. We have a few electrical users out there. Unlike everything, Autodesk is just one tool probably in what you're using to help you with your design engineering. So 9% are ultimately using non-Autodesk products, which is great. And finally, what are you using today from a point of view of managing this design data, whether it be AutoCAD, AutoCAD Mechanical, Inventor, Revit, or your non-Autodesk products? Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes. Okay, so let's show the results there. So, we've got a mixed bunch. As I thought, most of you probably are using Network or Windows to manage files. A few have leveraged Vault Basic, which comes with the design suites, and then ultimately 25% are using our Vault Professional. So, and then of course, 15% may be using SharePoint or what you have, other systems. So really, this session is about the Windows users and the Vault Basic. So anybody on Vault Professional, it's going to be just reiterating what you probably already know, and and ultimately there's some new functionality that you can benefit from. So thank you for that. So really, if we start looking at the challenges that companies are wanting to solve, and probably what's coming down to you as the design and engineering department is, help win more projects and ultimately increase sales, so that ultimately you've got lots of good work to keep you busy. And then typically when there is RFPs or RFQs come in, engineering have to respond to them to determine if you can actually build a product to meet the request. And as well from that point of view, getting your project or your product to market as quick as you can, is going to save the company money. And these pressures are being put on you to be able to manage this. As well as along the way, they want you to make sure there's no design errors, that you're producing a really top quality product that doesn't carry into the warranty stage, that erodes your profits. Ultimately have a more efficient change order process and really improve the whole process, while at the same time driving down your development costs and your preliminary design costs. So there's a lot of pressures that you see being put on the design and engineering department. And if you really looked at the life of a project or a product, the ability to impact that design or that product or project really decreases as you get further down the life cycle of that product or project. And really, if you start making changes later in the process, you've probably seen this, the cost will get more and more increase, and ultimately you have to weigh the balance of that. So, a lot of time, money is spent in that, detailed and prototyping space, and it's really, the ability to change versus cost is really starting to increase. So you see a lot of pressures being put on departments to say, hey, move up in and do more in the preliminary design, and ultimately drive down the costs. And what we see is if you do that, you can make more changes that are more cost effective and ultimately, get a better product. So it's really putting, as I see, a lot of pressure in the preliminary design for better design, better optimization of those designs, so you've got good quality, you're using your parts well, and ultimately, you're reusing design, because you don't want to be ultimately having lots of supply chain purchasing, so just keep reusing stock or reusing parts that you have in your systems, and ultimately is generating great documentation to provide to downstream production or manufacturing, or in the case of a project, what the deliverable is to your customers. So really you can see there's lots of emphasis happening in the design and engineering space. And if you really looked at the whole workflow within a company, the most referenced data is ultimately the corporate IP, which is ultimately your design and engineering, what your product is. And that, it's putting more pressure on you to be supplying all of these other departments with this reference material. So, it's very important that you have the ability and that you're not the bottleneck. And, in Autodesk, we do these business process assessments where we go around and talk to customers about what their challenges are. And we hear quite a lot that, the roadblock or the bottleneck in the whole process is design and engineering. And you can really see that that's because there's more emphasis on that part of the process and that organization to produce the reference material that they need to do downstream. So it's really, really important that, we can use that or do that efficiently. So, where Vault fits in the picture is it's really an engineering product data management solution that, will help these departments manage, any documents. Vault can support any file format, but its strength is managing, of course, 2D and 3D digital prototypes, or even in BIM data if need be. So, the strategy is about managing this. And what we've seen and what surveys have done is, the top performers, are 30% more likely to have a PDM system in place that helps manage their project or design data. And you might think, okay, we have a content management system within the company. It could be SharePoint, it could be, a website, but ultimately we're not talking about content management. We're talking about engineering data, more complex data that ultimately is interconnected through relationships, and ultimately it's about making sure the design and engineering department can efficiently manage that data and not be, using content management systems that make them inefficient or slow down their process. So what we see is that basically the engineers are wasting about 15% of their time just managing data, and that's wastage. If you were to actually look and do a survey, the surveys I've done, more than 50% of your time today is managing data. It's emails, it's spreadsheets, it's maybe I've met one customer who ultimately was doing data entry into 3 systems. One was a supply, a sort of part management system. One was an ERP system, and then one was a quality system. So you're seeing you're having to replicate data into other systems, and what we see is that ultimately there's a lot of wastage. You're not actually designing, you're not doing those things that help, remove you being the bottleneck in the whole process. And we also see that 25% of, the worst offenders in the sense of wastage is they waste more than 15, they waste 20, 25% just doing the things that they need to do to manage their data, and really, that can be resolved. 25%, that's, a quarter of your week. So how are we going to, where does the wastage come from? There's like 3 main things that we see. It's just finding data. It's really being able to get the data when you need it. What we see is 46% of all respondents to the survey show that they basically, have issues trying to find data. They're spending lots of time trying to find data. And really in today's world, you can, if you just looked at Google have built their whole company based on finding things. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago we would be just going to Google to find the answers to the questions that we have? So it's really trying to use that technology to be able to speed up, being able to help you find things, because once you can find it, you have the ability to reuse the data. I've worked in industry, and ultimately they say it takes more than 60 seconds for an engineer to find a part, he'll go off and try and rebuild it or redesign it himself. So, you really have to put good searching in there so that when you have it, you can don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can reuse that data, you can create copies of it, and ultimately, speed up the process. And then finally, the last one is collaborating. How many people come to you looking for this data? Being able to share this data beyond your department is key. It's also, being able to share the data with your colleagues, to work on projects together, to not override each other's work, and really, that basically speeds up the whole process. So if you really look at the wastage, this 15% that we call out, it really comes down to, managing today in a Windows network environment or on a network share. And the reason why we work on a network share is it's easy, right? It's up in place. We have these servers. IT will pushes towards that because it's really it's there, and it's a low cost solution to managing data. But from an engineering point of view, Windows is probably not the right place to be sharing data, just because of the fact that it doesn't have good ways of helping you find the data, good ways of reusing it, and ultimately it adds challenges to it. So if we look at let's look at the find the right information. If you really look at, if you were to come in and say, I need to find a gear that was used on a project a few years ago, it's like, where do you start? And what we find mostly in industry is that everyone has it. Somebody knows in the office in their head, project, we did 2 years ago, had this type. So it's really about tribal knowledge and who actually knows it. If you were to try to go to a Windows network share and start clicking through and trying to look at where something is, you're really just being able to drive off a file name. And some customers have really put intelligence in their file name that ultimately make it so you can look at it and know that this is a gear at this size, and it's really helpful what the material is, what the heat. But it adds challenges, right? The challenge we also see is that the right one? Is that being copied? Is it? And it's really a slow process in helping you make sure that you can find it and get to where you need to be. So we really want to reduce the amount of find time down to less than 60 seconds and get you to the data that you want. So really, where Vault fits into this, it's about this single repository or a single source of truth, where ultimately it's a platform. You can define it similar to your network drive. Behind it, it's really a database. It's got fast searching, and ultimately it becomes the single source of truth where everybody goes to, can find what they need, ultimately can search, and you get a lot more information around what exactly it is versus, a network drive that you just see a file name. We can add lots of properties that ultimately help in the searching capability. We can pull descriptions from the models or the drawings, and ultimately all of this is searchable. And with that, there's powerful searching capabilities that allow you to do Boolean searches, allow you to, save your most common searches, and ultimately, behind the scenes, it's using a indexing server that ultimately will make the finding really, really fast. And that's the power of Vault having that. And this capability exists in Vault Basic and Vault Professional. It's just not something that you can easily do on a network drive. So it definitely speeds up and makes you more productive, because then you can find what you need to do. So I'll do a quick demo and show you what that looks like. So here you see Vault is pretty much similar to Outlook in a way. It's built over here. Instead of your inbox, it's you've got like data folders, and all of these folders are really can be defined and set up by whatever way you want. So the expectations that we have is that you're going to transition from a network drive, and you've got these processes that you have in place for how you name your products or how you name your projects, so you can easily copy that structure over. The nicer thing is you can start putting permissions and controls on who can create these folders, who can modify these folders, so you've got a higher level of security around that, and ultimately everything's about trying to drive standards and commonality into a single location. So within the Vault world, you've got these advanced searches. You can basically come in, you can define them against different properties. But if I was to quickly go into, I want to look at a chassis, you'll see up here, you've got a really quick search window. You can basically type in last searches. It'll remember things that you've done before. You can extend these search capabilities. Instead of just one character searches or wildcard searches, you can start building out and adding criteria. And ultimately, you have the power then to save those if they're common queries that you're doing. And a typical common query that you may do is, I want to see all the parts that are checked out on a project. It'll go and find everything. If you have a specific individual you're working with, you can go and search. You want to see what Mike, the manager's checked out, or Dave, or if it's specifically a project, you can, assuming you've got the project metadata assigned to your files, you have the ability to search those and see and get visibility, which is key, right? The other key thing is you can create these quick shortcuts that allow you to move around quickly. If you're working with specific part of a project at any one time, you can just jump around and quickly create these shortcuts. And if you were to look inside of Inventor or AutoCAD or any of the Autodesk products that are integrated into Vault, you'll see that they have the same look and feel for searching and finding things within Inventor or within AutoCAD. So, you log in as your user, and ultimately, when you do open, you get the ability to do searches, just like I showed you through doing just the file name or any description name. You'll see here my saved searches. I can quickly jump around and see things that I've tagged to find. I can come in and do searches as well. And ultimately, it's about getting to where you need to be really quickly. So if you just come in here and typed in DWG, you see what's in the system. And really, you can define different states as well, or different properties that you want to search on. And these properties, these are really, open for you to extend and build on, and really, if you want to classify different parts of your project or products, these properties are really key for you driving and finding these files. If you have saved searches, you can easily come in and click on them, and you'll get to the data that you need to. And that's the same across all of the design tools. So, for Autodesk, we really see that the designer needs to be able to find things within the design tools, doesn't need to go out and go to a network drive, search through, and ultimately that's the speed and productivity gains you'll get from within the design tool. Okay, so that's that. Let's get back into the. So if you were to look at reusing design, after you find the data, it's now, how do you take the benefit of reusing it? So say you had a product that you wanted to make a change to, or actually a whole new product line. It gives you the ability to have intelligent copies that ultimately don't break the file relationships, whether it's an AutoCAD with XREFs or it's an Inventor assembly with lots of parts. It's really about managing those parts and being able to reuse them without breaking links. It also gives you the ability to rename things so that ultimately, you've got a copy of them. And really, this is key to, today you're probably copying it off a network drive, you're massaging it inside of another folder, and then you're copying it into a different folder. So lots of sort of manual processes to do that, whereas in Vault, you have the ability to quickly find those files, quickly be able to, either copy them with reuse subcomponents, and really be able to drive that. And the key to that is really using the copy design feature that ultimately was revamped last year in R2, and it's in this year. So giving you a stronger and deeper ability to take your designs and do copies of them, and it preserves all of those relationships. One of the things that I really think is strong within Vault's copy design is it doesn't just do children and assemblies and parts, it also looks back up to if there's drawings that were created for specific assemblies or for specific parts. So it looks up as well. So it will, in theory, it'll create a complete package with all of the models and assemblies and parts as well as the drawings. So that itself is powerful. So you're getting a complete snapshot of the product. You can make changes, and it will, with the associativity, it speeds up the whole process. As well within Vault, you have the ability to do batch editing and renaming and updating of properties. So you can easily, after you've done copies, come back in and if you have those properties mapped back into title blocks and it's a different project or a new product, you can ultimately do batch edits so that ultimately all those title blocks get updated automatically. So it's about, reducing the amount of manual effort in maintaining and modifying, you know, your data and speeding up that process so that you can have more time to do, the things that you need to do quicker. So I'll quickly give you a demo of that. So I have the padlock, because the padlock's got lots of relationships. So if I quickly come down here, I've got the padlock here. If you do a copy design on it, you'll see it's basically looked up and it's found all the relationships. So you'll see inside of Vault's copy design now that you have this ability to find all the reference documents that would have been connected to all the children subparts, and that's huge, right? You've got the ability then to decide how you want to do this. Do you want to do a copy, or do you want to exclude? So it's partial copies that you're doing, and it's really key to defining how what you're making of this assembly into the next level. So if I come down here and I said I'm going to copy, so you could copy into the existing location, or you could copy to a new location, and to basically separate your work. So I could create a new, padlock 2. This is a new product that we're going to do, and ultimately, it's copied that part and it said, okay, the top assembly. So all the rest of them are going to be reused, or I may want to do a complete copy, which ultimately is going to, move everything over here. So ultimately, you can see over here we've added new windows to be able to help you see what's happening. You can go through the different type of actions that are happening. You can actually replace certain parts with different parts that are inside of Vault. So there's a lot of functionality in the copy design, and I'll be discussing copy design in the next webinar. So this is just a highlight of it. We also have the ability to quickly come in and reassign naming conventions that ultimately allow you to then speed up and do batch renaming. There's other functionality around making sure properties are getting filled out. So it really expands beyond just the normal copy design that you may have been aware of in past releases. So it's a very powerful feature, one that again speeds up the time that you have when you're working with tight deadlines. So really powerful. Okay, let's look at the next section we want to look at, and that's about collaborating with colleagues, right? So today, if you're working with your colleagues, they say, in reality, this is the workflow, right? You're creating data. People want that data. There's data getting shared between sales and engineering because there's new RFPs. Then ultimately, there's potentially, different data getting created by different departments. But, engineering data, as I said, is core to that. And ultimately, there's lots of demands on this data. And ultimately, as a department, you have to service that. The beauty of Vault is you can actually, because it's a database, you can give access to these other departments to consume that data when you, as a department, have released it. And really, that's the power. You have one single source of truth. You have a platform. People can come in and see release data and get access to it when they need to. From a point of view of working with your colleagues in a design team, if you're sharing your activity, in Windows, ultimately, it lacks that fundamental capability of working together because only one person can work on it, and typically they say, people just copy it onto their local because it's too slow anyway to work off network drives, and then when they've finished working, they copy it back onto the network drive. And who knows, they may have overwritten your work. And it's really called the survival of the slowest because the last person to save wins. And it's really, it's not an effective way because ultimately designs are lost and work is lost, and sometimes that data gets sent out of the department that is wrong, and ultimately could go to a customer, could go to a supplier, could go to a fabricator who fabricates parts that are not the right design or the right version. So really it's about Vault puts the ability of locking and through checkout and check-in, and it really manages that versioning down to individuals. And you can't tell on a network drive if somebody has it open, right, or who's working on it. It's really just from that sort of close communication. So, if you do have individuals who are working in different offices, Vault really helps you be able to, see what's going on, see if people are working on it, be able to have that collaboration and communication to say, hey, I need that part, I need to make changes to it as well, or can you incorporate my change into your change so that we're covered. And one of the other things that Windows Drive does is you could have the biggest souped up computer, and it makes no sense if you're then opening a file off a network drive that's in another building or another room that's got low latency. So you're really not benefiting. You're opening from network drives, and Vault really takes the approach where we want to copy the file onto your workspace. You've reserved it, so you're the one individual who's working on it. You work on it locally. You've got the best performance. You basically then check it back into Vault, and it will take a copy and put your copy back into Vault, then that other people can access if they want to make changes. So it's really strong in that sense. And ultimately, as I said, it's a single source of truth. It's the latest. We see who's checked in and checked out. We know who's been working on it. It increases the visibility of what's going on, 200% more than what you do today if you're just working on a network drive, because you don't see that visibility. So, the key things are checking in and checking out files. Your local workspace is read-only if you haven't got it checked out. When you check it out, it becomes read-write. The CAD tools and Vault is smart enough to know if it's read-only, then you need to go and check it out of Vault. If somebody else has it, then you won't be able to check it out, but you know who has it checked out. So it's giving you that visibility and that ability to know who's working on it. It automatically versions it, and really, that's key. It's keeping versions, it's tracking all of the things that are happening. Windows network drive, you don't overwrite the last version unless somebody's taking, and this happens a lot in industry, they're just copying folders into other folders to do that periodic sort of backup or snapshot. Or, worst comes, you have to go to your IT department and say, pull a backup because, I lost all my work, or I need to go back to a specific version. Vault covers that off by having these versions that automatically you can go back to and retrieve. And if you need to then supersede that version to be the latest version. So, I'll give you a quick demo of that. It's really, key that when you're inside these design tools that you're connected into Vault. So I'll just log in as Dave the designer. So you basically see when I do open, where is it? Hold on a second. Oh. Bear with me. It looks like it's on another window that I can't see. Let's see it. All right. Well, let's try Inventor where it'll open. So when you go to an assembly, say the brakes, and you want to take out the if I hit open, it's going to ask you automatically. So this is the intelligence of knowing that your local copy is read-only, so it needs to check it out. So when you say check out yes, it's going to ultimately change the flag. And here's also, it it'll prompt you to say, hey, do you want to update any properties that may have changed in Vault that reflect back into mapped properties that are inside of the file? So you'd say yes, and this synchronization will happen, and making sure that the files that you have in Vault, which would be the latest, are ultimately updated on your C drive. So in this assembly, or if it was assembly, it would be bringing the changes down to your desktop. It would ultimately only bring out the files that have changed. And this is a key point around performance and user. If you were working on a 100-part assembly or an XREF that had 20 XREFs and only 2 of those files had changed based on somebody else's design, you would only bring out those 2 files, because we do a checksum with your local workspace and Vault, and it's ultimately determining what deltas only need to get brought out. So it's really increasing the performance of file copy from the system out into Vault, and ultimately you're bringing out the files that you need, and you're working off your local, so it speeds up. In most cases, I would be saying users should be using a solid state drive today, because that just adds additional performance to the Inventor and the Vault, and copying files out, it just increases the performance amazingly. So if you're not doing that, I suggest you do. So you can make changes to this, and ultimately it will determine if I change the loft on that, it will have these visual cues that ultimately will tell you green, so you've got a newer copy on your local. If somebody logs into Vault that isn't Dave the designer, so let's log in as, that was Ed, so I'll log in as Mike the manager. If he goes and looks at that file, or does a search and says, what's it checked out, I think this one checked out by Ed the engineer. So if I do search for Ed, let's look in here. You can see that Ed has that checked out, and you're getting these visual cues. The other thing I wanted to mention about the saving search too is, if you have saved searches and it comes back results, then you can do a search within those results to minimize it. So it's really helping you, get to where you need to be. In this case, it's a 5-stud disk, so I could come in here and just do disk, and I would get the same results. So you can see where the speed is and finding things, and now you've got the visibility of somebody who's checking files out. And that's really key to collaborating and working with your colleagues. And as you can see here, like I mentioned, you've got all these different versions of the file. You can see the history of who's worked on them, and if there was any specific changes like renames, or so it's really about visibility and being able to collaborate better with your colleagues. And like I said, this is a platform then ultimately for you to be sharing and even giving access to the production department or the manufacturing department. I've seen a lot of success where even the shipping department would come in and use Vault, because they can see what they're actually shipping to make sure they meet what's in the box, because depending on the customer demands and what the outage is, getting that part to the customer is critical, and being able to leverage the drawings or the models and compare them is quite useful for that department. So Vault is a platform for sharing and ultimately allowing people to get in and share and collaborate. So with that, I'm going to just reiterate, that Vault, it can manage any documents. It's not just necessarily CAD drawings. It can do Word. It has an integration to Office. It does manage other file formats like SolidWorks and Pro-E, and in the AEC space we have integrations into MicroStation. So if you were to look at the key drivers to want to implementing it, it really comes down to sharing are wanting to share data, right? So I think if you did a survey it's about people are saying I can't get data or I don't know where the data is. Bob is the only one who knows where it is, and you have to go to Bob and he'll help you. So it's about trying to improve sharing of knowledge, increasing collaboration, being able to make decisions a lot faster. We've seen in some cases where Vault has helped companies who typically would have sent in engineers to project sites or project offices to help, and ultimately now, because they can see and access the data from their home offices or where they are, there's no need for this travel. So there's a benefit in just reducing travel costs that you wouldn't typically think would be a benefit of this system, but it does. And it's really about helping reduce and be innovative, right, and being more productive for the design department. If you were to look at the biggest impediments of putting a document or data management system just for the engineering department in, it's probably a lack of understanding about what the benefits are. It could be, a cultural thing because there's 2 or 3 people who control all of the company's knowledge, and they don't want to, in essence, free up and release that knowledge. And cost of putting in this system, there is a cost to it, and typically, companies don't understand the ROI of what this system can do, and don't they see the cost as being an impediment. But if you were to actually, and I'll talk about it on another slide, if you actually were to look at the cost of not doing this and how you work today, and actually you would see that the benefits outweigh the costs extremely. So really, if I was to give advice on how to implement this, it's really you want to pilot on a specific product or a specific project that is getting you introduced to it, so that you're not taking a lot of risk on, and ultimately, the costs can be minimized, because if it doesn't work out for you or it's not something you feel there's benefit from, you haven't really spent too much time or cost in implementing it. And Vault is quite has a lot of functionality. It's deep in its breadth of functionality, so you kind of have to take a phased approach to doing that, and that's really getting your data under control, ultimately just getting people to get familiar with it as a central single source of truth, and really it starts small and build momentum as you go through that process. And really it's about less risk upfront. Typically, if you put more, you go big, scope creep, more risk, it takes longer, you don't see benefit, people lose their desire to implement it. So everyone we've seen who successfully uses Vault, and there is a lot of successful Vault users in Australia and New Zealand, and I'm happy to introduce you and have you talk to those customers. They typically start small, and they build these solutions up with time and get the real benefit of it. So by starting small, you will get quicker success, and it's about building success and seeing that, and ultimately whoever is paying for it and whoever is ultimately managing it sees the success and gets good feedback, then it will grow. And I suppose this is the key one, is change management. It's no good putting a tool in place if you're going to continue, doing things the old way. It's managing the change of putting in a more productive system like Vault, and really engage the experts and learn, so that you can become the owner of it, rather than dependencies on these experts. So this is a key one for me, is if we were to just take an example of 5 designers and engineers at $100 an hour, and if we said there were 30% of the time was doing data management, when in actual fact it's probably more, it's like 50 or 60. And I've averaged this out. It's about $300K a year that they're spending just doing this data management at 30% a year. So if we were to implement Vault to reduce that 15% through fine, reuse, and collaboration, just look at it. You're saving 150K in that first year, and that's just an example. And unbeknownst and what I've seen in the industry of putting these systems in is that the satisfaction rate of the engineering and design department actually goes up because they're now being able to do things, whereas before it was a challenge for them because finding things, the efforts of reusing or re-engineering, and it really just increases their satisfaction. And I've talked to customers who put Vault in, and ultimately they say they don't know how they've ever lived without it. So there's lots of benefits, and really the key to understanding data management is understanding what it's like today. I mean, most companies don't actually sit down and look at what the cost of rework is, what's the cost of sending data out to the wrong data to customers or suppliers, what's the cost of resolving design errors, what's the cost of quality and warranty. A lot of these metrics are not being measured, and ultimately they're just accepted as part of doing business. And really, the return of investment is difficult to position if you haven't got something to measure against. And really what we can do at Autodesk for you is ultimately we have this calculator that will go in and ask specific questions and help articulate what the ROI is to your management to be able to help you put this system in place. And like I mentioned, Vault is just a tool. It's really about your data. It's your IP that is part of it. It's about the people who are interacting with this tool and managing the data. And then it's ultimately the processes that you have in place today. And it's an equal portion of all four that ultimately will get you efficiencies and productivity and actually increase your satisfaction of doing design and engineering. So, there's a lot of information out there on Vault, and I will be posting this. I can post this document so you can download. The Vault help is really good. It's all online and available for you to search through. There is a number of blogs out there. There's an awful lot of classes on Autodesk University, which is open to everybody. There is a YouTube channel, and we have partners all over the world who basically create content for Vault and post to YouTube. So there's an enormous amount of information out there that you can access without even having Vault, right? And understanding the capability and functionality. For those who don't know, Autodesk is moving a lot of their information into the knowledge network that ultimately we will be bringing all of the information, blogs and YouTube videos all back into one central location so that you can go and find information relating to any Autodesk product, especially Vault. And we also, we have a lot of developers who build and extend the functionality of Vault, and really, these are features that will help facilitate specific workflow that you may need. One that I really recommend is this one from CAD Organize. They've built a number of functionalities that really help facilitate better property and file management, and really helps improve the processes even more. So with that, I'd like to advertise that Autodesk University is happening in Sydney on the 20th and 21st of August. We're going to have something like 44 tech sessions during the breaks. It's all about coming and networking with like-minded individuals who are using Autodesk solutions. And from the poll, 50% of the audience is 10 plus years using Autodesk products. So it's come, hear what other people are doing, network, see what's new in the products, and really get the most out of it. Typically, this happens in Las Vegas. There's like 10,000 people go to that every December. So we've now set this up in Australia, and we're building on this every year to get like-minded people together to share and understand what's going on, and really network with your peers. So with that, I'd just like to close with we have another webinar at 12:30 that's going to be a bit more advanced on what's new in Vault, on Thursday, I'll go one step up on the introduction of how to go beyond just file management with some other features within Vault Professional that will help you to be efficient and productive, and then the close will do one on more advanced copy design. So at this point, I will, if you have any questions, I will answer them. Let's see. Just a second. All right, I've got like 4 questions, 10 plus. Okay, Revit. Somebody's just said AutoCAD and Revit. I'm not exactly sure. Neil, is that a specific question? AutoCAD is fully integrated into Vault, has been for, probably the last 7 or 8 releases. Okay, thanks, Neil. Okay. Do you know of any building services engineers who successfully implemented Vault? So when you're saying building services, is that MEP customers who are ultimately linking into, yeah. I am not aware in this region of any building services. Mostly the customers we're using are high infrastructure customers and manufacturers. Definitely a lot of manufacturers who are servicing the building services are definitely modeling and storing their equipment, from HVAC to the air conditioning systems are definitely using Vault to manage their products in Vault. How difficult it is to transfer legacy data into Vault? We have utilities to do that. If it's AutoCAD data, the way that I find it the easiest is to actually, within AutoCAD, you can actually check in folders. So typically we say, take specific product lines and move them in, or move in specific projects. But there is an autoloader that can bulk load in files. There is ways of then populating the metadata with that. In some cases you can just drag and drop into Vault, then clean it up and then copy it out and then bring it back into Vault through different iterations successfully. What we find a lot of times when we're moving data off network drives are, you've got missing, broken references that typically point back to files that may be sitting on somebody's C drive, and that's a reality. So the best thing to do is, you basically have a scanning tool to scan your data, and it will produce a error report, and then ultimately you'll go through and work with your teams to find those errors and resolve them. In some cases, it's crap out is crap in. You just have to live with it, and then as you come across the problems and as you modify them, then you fix them. But yeah, it typically moving data can be challenging, but it has to be a stepped approach. What's the difference between Basic and Pro? Basic is really just versioning, check in, check out and versions. So Pro adds a lot more functionality on top of giving you life cycles and revisioning and copy design and multi-site collaboration. If you go to the Autodesk website, there will be a list of comparison between the Vault and Professional around the capability. But Neil, I'm happy to have a one-on-one meeting with you to go through and show you the differences. Okay, so Raj has got one. Currently, I'm a single designer in a company and 4 off in a CAM area. All our data are on the Windows. Yeah, I guess I need to set up Vault. Yep, you need to set up Vault in a server. So is Vault Basic sufficient? Vault Basic will give you the capability of putting folders and files in. It doesn't give you much access control. Your CAM guys will see all of your files, no matter whether they're work in progress or not. So there's a level of what you want the CAM guys getting hold of. And typically, I'm sure today you're probably working on your C drive and you only release it to them when you're ready through the network drive. So there is added benefit to putting more permissions and controls around your data, Raj, and then ultimately releasing that data to the CNC shop. So it definitely has benefit. Okay. Is it a single designer? Okay, so if it's a single designer and basic enough, sufficient for this? Yeah. I mean, typically Vault is more multi-user you would target. So, I would say for single users, start with Vault Basic. Definitely will help you with searching and finding data. And it does allow you to, pull properties out of the files, and that will help with your searching capability. So, Vault Basic, if you're not using it, definitely start with it. With this Vault Basic, you get a SQL Server Express, which is more than ample for a single user. Once you start moving up into multiple users and multiple sites, then the SQL Express is very limited. So yeah, you can definitely recommend trying out Vault Basic if you're single users. So that seems to be all the questions that I'm seeing popping up now. So with that, let me just make sure you've got my information, and you can reach out to me if you've got any additional questions. Let's see. So yeah, so Autodesk authorized resellers have the ability to sell Vault and to implement Vault. So you reach out to your preferred reseller if you want to pursue looking at Vault in more detail, and then ultimately, if you need to contact me directly, and we can discuss this more about what is available. And with that, I'd like to wrap up and thank you for your time, and hopefully today you learned something new about Vault, and you'll look at ways of implementing it to help you save that 15% to make your life easier. Okay? All right. Thank you, everyone.